If there's one thing Disney's become known for over all these years, it's their princesses. From classics like Snow White and Cinderella to more recent characters like Rapunzel and Elsa, the Disney princesses have been a huge part of the studio's animation output, so much so that it's hard to think about where they'd be without them. But out of all these beloved characters, which ones are the fairest of them all? And which ones would we not want to live in a kingdom of? That's right, today we're taking a look at every single Disney princess and ranking them from good to evil. We're not just looking at the official princesses either. Characters who were once considered princesses and almost princesses will also be joining the fray. With all that settled, let's get right into it. I'm Keith Finosi with Wicked Binge, and this is Disney Princesses Good to Evil. As usual, we'll start off with the best princesses and then work our way down to the not-so-good ones. These princesses are the good. Kicking things off is the winner of the gold medal of good, Mulan. Mulan is a character who truly loves and cares for all around her. Her reasoning for joining the war effort against the Huns was to bring honor to her family, her father specifically. She put her entire life on the line to do this. Not only did she risk life and limb while on the battlefield, but being a woman soldier was also an incredibly risky thing to do. If at any point she was revealed to not be a man, the consequences would be dire. However, Mulan is proof that being a hero is not specific to any one gender. She saves her fellow soldiers time and time again throughout the movie, yet she never lets her victories go to her head.
From now on, you have my trust.
Mulan could have very easily become vain and full of herself, yet she remains humble until the very end. Her heroism is indeed a big reason we give her this #1 spot, but the main reason is that her actions saved the entirety of China. She defeats the evil Shan Yu, becoming one of the few princesses to defeat the villain, herself, and brings peace to her home. There aren't many princesses that even come close to having an act as heroic as that, and even the ones who do suffer from a few notable character flaws. Mulan does not have that problem. While Mulan's love for her family and nobility help put her in the upper echelon of princesses, it's her unflinching heroism that makes this soldier the best of them all. Up in second place, we have to give our silver medal of good to Esmeralda. From the underrated Hunchback of Notre Dame, Esmeralda might have the biggest heart out of any Disney princess. She's lived her life as an outcast, and as a result, she's become a huge proponent of freedom for all citizens. She's a particularly big critic of Judge Claude Frollo, and in a lot of ways, she can be seen as his polar opposite.
You mistreat this poor boy the same way you mistreat my people.
While Frollo embodies the worst aspects of humanity, Esmeralda embraces the best of it. She's not interested in appearances, instead deciding to look into one's heart. It's this aspect of her character that causes her to become the first person to truly show Quasimodo kindness. Esmeralda's also a very selfless and brave individual. When she's about to burn at the stake, she refuses Frollo's offer of salvation and even spits in his face. She'll also look out for others who are in similar situations to her own. The Court of Miracles is where many of Paris's outcasts go, and it can be inferred that many of its residents were led there by Esmeralda. Esmeralda might not have done anything as heroic as saving all of China, but we must admit that there are characters to come that have done greater deeds. But Esmeralda wins out on account of how pure she is. She's a character free from a lot of the insecurities and shortcomings a lot of princesses deal with. Overall, while Esmeralda might not be an official Disney princess, her crusade for human rights and selfless nature make her more than capable of competing in the big leagues. Rounding out the top three, we give the bronze medal of good to Moana of Motunui. A certified sea lover, Moana was presented with the gargantuan task of saving the world. The fact that this objective was given to her is already definitive proof that she belongs in the top three, but there's a lot more to Moana's character than just that. Like Mulan before her, Moana is very devoted to her friends and family, and she wants nothing more than for them to be safe. She knows a lot is on the line if she fails the quest the oceans bestowed upon her. Moana also has a bit of a go-getter personality. She takes on challenges head-on, even if the outcome doesn't always end well for her. Whether it be tackling Tamatoa or confronting Taka, Moana is not the type of person to back down. Now, although she's a loving and selfless person, she does have some notable flaws that unfortunately cost her a potential second or first place position. As she is still relatively young, Moana can be rather rash and reckless. As we mentioned before, she relishes new challenges, but she tends to fail to approach them carefully. She's kind of stubborn in those regards. Moana can also be a bit selfish at times. There are times in the movie when she's so determined to prove herself that she essentially throws others out to the wolves.
Yep, I just did that.
These flaws become a major roadblock in her relationship with Maui, and for a time, the two separate from each other because they can't work well together. Despite all this, Moana is still one of the bravest and most loving Disney princesses out there. Besides, we think saving the world's ocean kind of balances out being stubborn. Wouldn't you agree? We're going back to the Renaissance era for our next entry, Belle. The beauty in Disney's Beauty and the Beast, Belle is one of the smartest princesses of them all and a huge bookworm. This leads her to be looked at as something akin to an outcast, but Belle does her best not to let that get to her. She knows that, at the end of the day, the only person's opinion who matters about her is her own. She'll also stand up for herself when it's necessary, whether it be to Gaston, the Beast, or anybody else.
I just don't deserve you.
Speaking of the Beast, her relationship with him shows more of Belle's strengths. It reinforces her bravery, but it also shows that she's not superficial in the slightest. Like Esmeralda, she looks within to find beauty, instead of at the surface. She's able to see the good in Beast, becoming the first character to show him genuine love and affection since his transformation. Her love is ultimately reciprocated, and she becomes the person who breaks the curse bestowed onto Prince Adam, saving not only him but his servants as well. While Belle might not be as much of a fighter as someone like Mulan or Moana, she's proof that you can be a brave and daring individual without picking up swords and stones. For all the aforementioned reasons, we have to give her this spot high up on our list. Up next is the only Disney princess based on a real person, Pocahontas. Like pretty much everyone else we've covered thus far, Pocahontas is a free spirit. When she's first brought up in the movie, she's run off to do her own thing, which prompts a friend to come retrieve her. Pocahontas is consistently rebellious, a fact best evidenced by her relationship with her father. She argues a lot with Chief Powhatan, and on everything from how he runs things to the man he's chosen to marry her. Though they rarely are on the same page, she still has an incredible amount of love and respect for him. Pocahontas' biggest strength is that she can always see the good in others. She creates a strong bond with John Smith, and when the chief is ready to kill him at the film's climax, she stands between them, arguing that this act would make him no better than the settlers he's grown to despise.
If you kill him, you'll have to kill me too.
This gesture works as the chief releases Smith and ceases the fighting. She stands as a very loving person, and this love helps bring the natives and settlers united in peace. Pocahontas might not be the most accurate representation of her real-life counterpart, but in the annals of Disney heroines, few stand as tall as her. Coming back firmly to the world of fiction is one of Disney's newer characters, Raya. From Raya and the Last Dragon, she acts as one of the most skilled fighters out of any of the princesses, but how well does she stack up morally? Well, she's got to be good if she's tasked with saving the world. Raya, like the majority of the Disney princesses, cares deeply for her friends and family. But while she's very caring toward them, the same cannot be said for how she views strangers, an attitude that does cost her a higher ranking on the list. She's pretty distrustful toward new faces, and this ends up becoming her major character flaw. However, it is something that she learns to grow past as the story progresses. By the end of the movie, she sacrifices herself in the hope that her enemy Namari will do the same to help unite the Dragon Gem and restore peace to their civilizations. Her trust in her former rival ultimately saves the day, showing just how far she's come since the film's opening. Speaking of Namari, Raya's relationship with her does give her untrusting nature some justification.
What can I say? Bling is my thing.
The two grew up as close friends until the day came when Namari betrayed Raya. We think a lot of us would be a little extra careful of others if this were to happen to us, so we don't blame her. While this flaw does prevent us from putting her higher on the list, her character growth and overall goal are enough to keep her in the big leagues. And as we said earlier, we can't blame Raya for being a bit cautious when it comes to trust. As you'll soon see, some princesses could have benefited from a similar mindset. We're taking a trip to New Orleans for our next princess, Tiana. We feel Tiana's character could be summed up by one word: persistent. Throughout her whole life, she's dreamed big, and she won't stop until she accomplishes her dream of creating a restaurant. In her eyes, she's almost there. She works her very hardest to make this dream a reality, and she's not interested in accepting shortcuts. She could have very easily taken her friend Charlotte's money to build the place, but she finds working to be the more honest path. This does make her into a bit of a workaholic, which is probably her biggest character flaw, but it's not enough to sink her ranking in our eyes. When she's turned into a frog, she goes through a perilous journey to turn back, which showcases some of her more heroic attributes. She saves Naveen at a few points, and that also serves to show her softer side. She cares deeply for her family and friends, and even though it takes some time for Naveen to grow on her, she still helps him throughout his entire journey.
Watch and learn.
By the end of the movie, they've become a couple that was more happy to stay as frogs forever if it meant they were destined to be together. Tiana is easily one of the most down-to-earth and loving Disney protagonists we've seen so far, so how could we not place her on this side of the list? From the lost city of Atlantis, our next princess is Kida. And before you ask, no, we're not even going to attempt to say her full name. Okay, I will. Kida Gakash Negak. It's pretty good, right? A skilled warrior and Atlantean royalty, Kida strives to put the well-being of her people before her own. She wants what's best for them, and if she feels this conflicts with what her father wants, then she isn't afraid to argue with him.
You do not know any better.
She does argue with him that their way of life is dying and that action must be taken if they're to thrive. When push comes to shove, Kida will fight whatever poses a threat to her people, and she isn't afraid to sacrifice herself if the need arises. The main reason we put her a bit lower on the list is that, frankly, we don't get much time to spend with her in the Atlantis movie. Just as soon as we meet her, she's thrown into a prison, and it isn't until the very end of the movie that she's freed. There's also the small fact that her interactions with Milo inadvertently lead the villain mercenaries to ransack the lost city. Of course, she never could have known this, but we feel it's worth noting. Though she doesn't get the most amount of action, during the short time we do follow her, Kida is one of the most fearless and caring princesses the sea could ever ask for. Next up is the most recent character on our list, Mirabel from Encanto. From the moment she first appears, Mirabel Madrigal is a nice, loving, and outgoing person. She gets along with her family well and is generally liked by the community. There is but one problem she faces, however, and that's the fact that she lacks any distinct gift like those the rest of her family has. Because of this, Mirabel frequently feels like the odd one out. She feels like more of an outsider than a true member of her own family. However, as the movie continues, Mirabel grows as a character thanks to the realization that there are more things that make her and her relatives similar than there are differences. Just like her, they struggle under the weight of expectations. This journey also leads her to welcome the ostracized Uncle Bruno back into the family with open arms. All of these interactions lead her to become more confident, an attribute that's best exemplified when she stands up to her abuela.
Your uncle is dying because of you.
This act helps resolve the conflict, both inner and outer, between herself and the family. You'll see quickly that it becomes something of a running theme for the next few characters, as standing up to their parents is a big moment in their stories. Mirabel's confrontation with her abuela might not be as eventful as Kida standing up to her royal father, but in terms of creating real positive change in their environments from confronting family, few are on par with this member of the Madrigal's household. From the sandy desert that is Agrabah comes Princess Jasmine. Like Kida and Mirabel before her, Jasmine's character is best represented through her willingness to stand up for what she believes is right. She's a huge critic of Agrabah's culture, believing their ways to be outdated and, frankly, antique. She refuses the idea of an arranged marriage, too, saying that she's not a prize that's to be won.
I am not a prize to be won.
Jasmine is not at all superficial, as she sees more in people than surface-level beauty and wealth. This is a big reason why she ends up with Aladdin, a thief who lives on the streets. Jasmine grows to care deeply for him. During the film's climactic battle with Jafar, Jasmine aids Aladdin in the fight, and you get the sense that she'd do anything to keep him safe, just as he would her. Like a lot of Disney's most heroic princesses, Jasmine is in many ways an original. She's defiant, rebellious, and isn't afraid to do what she believes is right. The only reason why we put her below characters like Mirabel and Kida is that she doesn't really get the chance to enact the change she wants to. While the former character's actions do bring about change, Jasmine doesn't quite get the opportunity, unfortunately. Still, few princesses will stand up to their own families, and because of that bravery, we have to place Jasmine at this spot on our list. Up next is the long-haired Rapunzel. From 2010's Tangled, this princess was stolen as a baby and left to spend most of her upbringing in a tower. While this could have incredibly negative effects on a person's attitude, Rapunzel is as outgoing as any character on this list. In fact, she might be outgoing to a fault. When she finally gets the chance to escape into the outside world, she takes it and all the possible dangers head on. She can be a little untrusting, as shown when she first meets the fugitive Flynn Rider, but after she gets to know him, the two become great friends. Rapunzel isn't one to be scared, and while she's not completely fearless, she is absolutely one of the bravest princesses. Take her confrontations with Mother Gothel, for example. After realizing that she's been taken from her real parents by her, Rapunzel vows that Gothel will never again take advantage of her.
And I will never let you use my hair again!
It's an incredibly brave moment on her part, and it's something few others here can say they've done. The only notable flaw that we can pinpoint in Rapunzel's character is that she's rather unknowledgeable about things around her. But let's be real for a second, if you were locked up in a tower for around 2 decades, you'd be the same way. With all that being said, this princess and her lengthy locks more than make sense for this spot on our list. Our next princess is the first from Frozen, but not the last. Who else could it be other than Anna? Of the two princesses in this franchise, Anna is the more outgoing and extroverted one. She loves people and is very trusting, but this is a bit of a flaw in her character in the film. While her sister spends most of the movie cold and distant, Anna befriends everyone, which becomes a problem when she almost marries the film's surprise villain, Hans. Admittedly, there are still plenty of other characters we have yet to touch on that trust far more obvious villains, but it certainly does highlight a critical flaw in her character. Anna's outgoing nature itself is something of a facade. She might seem warm and friendly, but in actuality, she suffers from self-esteem issues. For example, she worries throughout the first movie that she's the reason Elsa's shut herself out from others.
All you know is how to shut people out.
Despite these flaws, Anna is a fearless leader. In some ways, this leads her to come off as reckless, but she'll always mean well. She wants what's best for the people of Arendelle, as well as her sister. She would do anything for her loved ones, whether it be her sister Elsa or her eventual husband Kristoff. She even nobly sacrifices herself when she stops Hans from killing Elsa. While it is reversed, it's easily one of the most heroic acts of any princess character, and a strong enough reason to keep her on the more positive side of the list. Interestingly enough, Anna is one of the only Disney princesses we've ever seen become a queen in the canon, and although she isn't perfect, we cannot argue that she isn't a good fit for such a title. Up next is one of Disney's most classic princesses, Cinderella. The stepdaughter of the wicked Lady Tremaine, Cinderella is a hard worker who dreams big. Even in the oppressive situation she's stuck in, she remains optimistic that her future will improve. She's a hard worker too, in stark contrast to her lazy stepsisters who spend most of their days in the comfort of a bed. Cinderella is also not afraid to stand up for herself.
Why, that means I can go too.
When she thinks Lady Tremaine or somebody else is doing something immoral, she'll confront them about it. Despite these positives, Cinderella's not perfect. In our eyes, her biggest flaw is that she can be very fearful. It makes total sense given her horrid upbringing, but it does make her look not quite as strong as the characters we've already looked at. She's also kind of passive in the film when compared to the more modern Disney princesses. She doesn't suffer from this nearly as badly as some of the others that do, that we'll get to later, but we still think it deserves to be mentioned. Regardless, Cinderella embodies a lot of the best aspects of a Disney princess, and that's true whether she's wearing a glass slipper or not. We're going back to the beginning for our next pick, Snow White. As the very first princess in Disney's pantheon, Snow White seems positively outdated in a lot of areas. She's very unassertive in the movie, for instance. She doesn't confront the queen for her harsh treatment of her, and she's unconscious for the majority of the film's last act. We also just can't get over her eating the poison apple. I mean, sure, she never could have guessed it would kill her, but shouldn't she have been just a little bit apprehensive? So if we're ragging on Snow so hard, why is she still higher than so many others? We rank her here because, despite all of her issues, she feels like a personification of all that's good in humanity. While the evil queen represents the worst emotions we face, Snow White's like a shining beacon of love. You could even argue that her refusal to confront the queen is a result of this characterization, as it shows that she values peace and solitude over the evil queen's anger and tyranny. She welcomes the seven dwarves with open arms, she has no problem doing housework, and she's very friendly, arguably to a fault. Because of all that, we can't picture a better placement for Snow White than this spot on our list. You've also got to hand it to her. She inadvertently presents a pretty good reason as to why you shouldn't accept food from strangers. Halloween is an outlier. Now it's time to look at the Sleeping Beauty herself, Aurora. We mentioned earlier that many of Disney's older princess characters are rather passive in their respective movies, and unfortunately, Aurora may very well have gotten the absolute worst of it. She spends the majority of her youth sheltered following a curse put on her by the evil Maleficent, and when she finally starts to get out of her comfort zone, the spell takes effect. As a result, Aurora has the least amount of screen time of any Disney princess. While the movie is named after her, the fairies, Prince Philip, and even Maleficent get more time to shine than Aurora herself. As a result, we barely get to know her, so it's hard to justify putting her on the higher end of this list. However, what we do know of her from the movie paints a picture of a very gentle and loving person. She loves the fairies as if they're her own parents, and although she is apprehensive of him when they first meet, she quickly warms up to Philip. It's just a shame that she spends so much of the movie absent. Aurora is a kind-hearted princess, but her lack of a genuine character arc forces her to be put in a lower spot on the list than she might actually deserve. Get ready, because our next character is going to take us on an expedition to Africa. Jane Porter from Tarzan is next. An animal researcher from Britain, Jane has got to be one of the smartest characters we've covered yet. However, as smart as she is, she can be surprisingly foolish. She's a little on the arrogant side of things, which is shown most notably when she teases a baby baboon, which could have easily spelled certain doom for her. We also find it odd that she went with Clayton as her guide on the expedition. Like, could you seriously not see that this guy was gonna do something terrible? But while Jane's upper-class life has made her a bit stuck up, her experience in the jungle allows her to get out of her comfort zone. She eventually falls in love with Tarzan, a man who is anything but prim and proper, and she ultimately decides to stay with him in Africa. She also has her fair share of heroic moments. At the end of the movie, she helps him in his quest to save the gorillas from Clayton. She even tries to take Clayton on herself, although it proves unsuccessful. Even so, it's a heroic act that you wouldn't have imagined the character doing at the beginning of the movie. Jane can be a bit bullheaded and full of herself, but she's proof that sometimes getting out of the familiar and into the unknown is what you need to help you grow as a person. We're going back to New Orleans for our next pick, Charlotte LeBeouf. The best friend to Tiana, Charlotte is something akin to a foil to her friend. While Tiana has worked for everything she has, Charlotte is pretty spoiled and is no stranger to having everything handed to her on a silver platter. You might think this makes her a greedy and selfish person, and while it is true that she does act very self-centered at times, she's actually a pretty friendly character. She's been Tiana's best friend since childhood, and she would do anything to help her out. Charlotte would even give up her dreams if it meant helping Tiana, and she essentially does that when she agrees to kiss Naveen for her.
I'll kiss him. For you, honey.
Though it erases her chances of becoming a princess, it's a crucial moment in the evolution of Tiana and Naveen's relationship. Charlotte is the most spoiled princess out of any on this list, but there's always more to a person than their first impressions. Underneath all her vanity lies a true friend who more than earns this spot. We've finally reached the last spot on the good tier, and who else could drop in other than Elsa? Elsa, if we're being honest, is a complicated figure. After developing ice powers at a young age, Elsa becomes deathly afraid of what she could do if she fails to control them. This creates a person who is introverted and quite literally cold, as she'll shut out any possible friend for fear of hurting them.
It just can't.
In the first Frozen, her fears are ultimately made manifest when she curses Arendelle with a perpetual winter. As the story unfolds, her control over these powers weakens, causing her to come very close to killing Anna and many others. Only the love of her sister Anna helps break not just the curse on Arendelle, but also Elsa's insecurities. From that point on, Elsa does indeed start to grow more confident in both herself and the abilities that she possesses. By the end of the second film, Elsa makes the shocking discovery that she is the fifth spirit, and she stays behind in the forest to become its protector. A pretty sharp contrast to the character in the first film who tried to hide her powers, right? So while Elsa has done some pretty heinous things with her ice powers, we feel that there's been enough good accomplished with them that she stays on this portion of the list. That does it for Elsa, but it was certainly ice to see her. I'm sorry, but we had to once. Just once, that's it. And that finally does it for our heroic princesses. Now we look at those who aren't evil, but they aren't exactly good either. This is the gray area. First on the chopping block is Vanellope von Schweetz. Hailing from the arcade game Sugar Rush Racer, Vanellope might be the princess who least embodies the aspects associated with the archetype. After being banished from her game by the nefarious Turbo, Vanellope develops a cold and selfish personality. It's only when she starts to interact with Ralph that she opens up.
And everyone here says I'm just a mistake.
Underneath her hard and mean exterior lies a character who feels hurt and betrayed, and given her backstory, it's hard not to see why. While Vanellope opens up to Ralph, she herself starts to see there's more to him as well. She's the first character to see that he's not just the bad guy, and though they have their arguments, the two save each other's behinds more times than you can count. Well, there are a lot of positives to her character. The main reason we place Vanellope in the gray area is because of how radically different she is from all of the other more outwardly heroic princesses. While she does help her friend, and she's a generally nice person, she doesn't have that same do-good nature that we've seen from pretty much every other character so far. She can be a lot meaner than the other princesses. Her arguments with Ralph are proof of this, and although she never means what she says, could you really imagine any of the other princesses talking like her? In conclusion, Vanellope feels like the ideal gray area character for this list, and is truly a Disney princess unlike any other. Up next is everyone's favorite mermaid, Ariel. A lot of you might be surprised to see Ariel near the end of our list. She's on good terms with pretty much everyone under the sea, be they mermen or fish, so what's the deal? Well, we can't exactly ignore the fact that she quite literally signs a deal with the devious sea witch. Like, come on, you had to know that would have gone south at some point, especially if she's taking your own voice. Of course, the deal with Ursula eventually goes south, and Ariel very nearly loses everyone she holds dear. On the bright side, she does ultimately make amends when she helps defeat Ursula and restore peace to the sea, but you can't help but think that it would have all been avoided if she had just been a little bit wiser. Ariel's bubbly personality should have made her a surefire shot for a high position on our list, but unfortunately for her, she'll have to make do with this spot on the list, sorry. Speaking of characters who have a penchant for making bad deals, the sharp-witted Megara is up next. Megara is another character character who ends up in the gray area on account of some poor decision making. However, we would argue it's far worse in Megara's case. While Ariel just made a deal with a witch, Megara makes a deal with the god of the underworld. She makes the deal with Hades for a noble enough cause, that being to save her boyfriend.
You sold your soul to me to save your boyfriend's life.
Unsurprisingly, he ends up falling for another woman, leaving Meg stuck between a rock and a hard place. In the film, Meg ends up aiding Hades in his many attempts to kill Hercules. She ends up being partly to blame for tons of destruction that lies in the wake of these attacks. Megara's assistance to Hades could put her even lower on the list, but there are two bright spots in her character. For one, she makes it very clear throughout the movie that she doesn't enjoy working for Hades. She'll take any chance she can to make him the butt of a joke, showing that she does have regrets about her actions. The other major reason is that she ends up sacrificing herself for Hercules. While she's brought back to life shortly afterward, this stands as not only her most heroic act, but one of the most heroic doings of any Disney princess. Still, for her dealings with Hades and the underworld in general, we think the gray area is a perfectly reasonable fit for her. And that does it for the gray area. It's now time to look at the princesses who you'd best avoid. These characters are evil. We've only got 2 princesses left, so our Silver Medal of Evil recipient, surprisingly enough, is Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell looks to be a pretty innocent character, so what could prompt us to put her so low on our list? Well, to put it simply, Tinkerbell is a very jealous fairy, with the word very doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Tinkerbell doesn't particularly like other women. While, yes, she does eventually come around on characters like Wendy and befriend them, we can't really get over the fact that she's tried to kill other heroes. There are certainly a few princesses with body counts, but for all of them, it's only the villains that they take out. And Wendy isn't just some minor character in Peter Pan, but the main protagonist, making this aspect of Tinkerbell's personality stand out even more. So while Tinkerbell might be a hero in the context of the film, when stacked up against every other princess we've looked at, it's hard not to see her as being a little bit villainous. We only have 1 princess left in the evil area, so who exactly could it be? Well, we have to give the gold medal of evil to Merida. The only princess to originate from a Pixar movie, we choose Merida as our most evil entry because she embodies the worst aspects of everyone we've looked at so far, but with virtually none of the positives. She's rash, arrogant, hot-headed, and not the brightest. While other characters heading towards this point were serving a greater master like Megara, the only agenda Merida works toward is her own. And while yes, she does ultimately grow and evolve as a character like pretty much everyone else on this list, we feel her actions leading up to that destination aren't exactly worth it.
I'd rather die than be like you!
Her desire for the meeting between the clans to be cancelled had the possibility of erupting into a full-blown war, and, of course, she buys a spell from a witch that's only purpose is to change her mother. While Megara and Ariel did get into stuff like this, and should have known better, at least what they did only affected themselves. Merida's decision here, evidently, only serves to harm her mother, and she had no idea it would turn her into a bear. On the bright side, Merida being considered the most evil Disney princess is still a far cry from being an absolute villain. But when we look at all her deeds and transgressions, she definitely fits the bill for being the evilest Disney princess of them all. Before we wrap things up, how about we give out some medals to those who deserve them most, eh? First up, we give the Darwin Medal to Ariel herself. Was giving up your voice the best of ideas? Next, we have to give the Envy Medal to Tinkerbell, who frequently grapples with feelings of jealousy over characters like Wendy. We're going to go ahead and give Charlotte LeBeouf the Lust Medal on account of her strong desire to marry a prince. Aurora from Sleeping Beauty gets the Sloth Medal. She spends most of the movie quite literally asleep. How could we not give her this one? The Wrath Medal goes to Elsa, based on how uncontrolled and dangerous her ice powers are in the first film. The Gluttony Medal belongs to Snow White. The apple she ate did almost kill her, making this medal the perfect choice for all Snow. We feel like Moana best embodies the Pride Medal, as she's incredibly headstrong and sure of herself. Last, but certainly not least, the Greed Medal is Merida's. Despite having pretty much everything handed to her by royalty, she still seems unhappy with her situation. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the moralities of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But, most importantly, stay wicked!